I'd like to welcome everybody tonight to the Interstate 29 and 85th Street interchange study public meeting. This is the first meeting that we've had for the interchange at this location. So for tonight, the format, we're going to give a short presentation, kind of go over the project, just kind of some of the highlights where we're at with the interchange project. And then after the short presentation, then we have boards set up in the back. We have boards for the interchange project. We also have a couple stations over here for the 85th Street, the City of Sioux Falls project, as well as the County Road 106 project that the City of T is working on with HDR. After we won't have a question and answer. It'll just be an open house where we have plenty of staff here tonight. And we'll be able to answer questions if you guys have those. My name is Al Murrah. I'm with SEH Engineering. I'm the local project manager for the interchange project. And I got Ross Harris here with me. He's with SEH. He's one of our senior planners. He's the project manager and lead on the environmental part of the project. So some of the other people that we have South Dakota DOT people here tonight. We have Federal Highway. We have City of Sioux Falls, City of T. We got HDR, Sioux Falls MPO, Lincoln County, Federal Highway. So we got a lot of people here tonight to answer questions if you guys have questions. So here's kind of our agenda that information we want to talk about tonight. We'll go through the study area. We'll talk a little bit about the project timeline, the major work tasks that have been complete to date, and where we're at with those, the draft purpose and need statement for the project, the alternatives that are being evaluated for the environmental study that we're working on, and then the schedule and next steps. And so then we'll be here till 7 o'clock tonight. So just a little bit about just an overview here of where the project is. Some of you probably were here for meetings for the overpass at the same location, but the project limits are on I-29 from 41st Street on the north to County Road 106 on the south, and then along 229 it extends just east of the Western Avenue interchange. And then on 85th Street it extends from County Road 111, or the T. Ellis Road, on the west, and then Louise Avenue on the east. And so we have, this information is also at some of the boards in the back, so I know you probably can't see some of this up here. Here's kind of a timeline for the project. The Overpass study that was worked on started back in 2009. That was completed, and that was actually approved last year, in March of last year. And so what we're working on is a study for an interchange at the same location. And so once the Overpass environmental study was approved, we submitted our justification report, our report for a new interchange here to Federal Highway last year, and that was approved in October. That was given a tentative approval in October, which allowed us to start on the environmental study for this project. So once the environmental is complete and has approval, then we'll have approval for the interchange. So that's kind of where we're at today. We started work on the environmental study here in January of this year. And I'll let Ross jump in and talk a little bit about the environmental study.
Thanks, Al. We have 3 major pieces of our scope of services and work to perform on the project. And I'll just briefly highlight and tell you a little bit more about what they include and what our current status of them are. The first 2 are actually survey and environmental studies. The survey work is largely complete. There's a lot of terminology on the slide here that is a little bit technical for folks, but the bottom line is we have to have all of the survey work completed before we can begin any kind of engineering design work. So we are very close to having the existing conditions base map completed. We do expect that to be done here very soon. All of that data then transfers to the engineers so they can start actually doing the design work. What you're seeing behind in the background is what we call concept design. So functionally it works, it all makes sense, but you can't build anything from that. It's just to give you an idea of what it would look like before we take it to the next step. So that's survey. For the environmental studies, the work in progress includes agency and tribal coordination. Agencies, these are federal and state agencies that have jurisdictional authority over things such as wetlands, threatened and endangered species, regulated materials, those types of things. What we do is we ask them, based on what the study area is, what's out there? Is there anything that we need to be aware of before we even get started? Because it does affect how we lay out alternatives. Same way with the tribes. There may be tribal resources, so we need to know up front what's going on. So we're in the process of collecting all of that information back. We are also working on what we call special studies and field work right now. We got started on a few of these last fall before the weather turned, so we were able to get wetland delineation work done. And the rest of these are works in progress as we speak. Especially the field work, which we really honestly haven't been able to get started until just recently here again. So wetlands, regulated materials, we'll be doing another noise analysis of the area, and culture resources. This is where we would look for architectural and archaeological historical resources that may need to be protected. The third major task is preliminary engineering and design. And so what this entails is, I mentioned just a little bit about kind of taking some of those conceptual drawings that were done previously, things that you see behind you, and making them actually into engineering drawings, engineering documents. So the terminology we use include horizontal alignment, vertical alignment, typical sections. Engineers basically will put a huge plan set together, and that's what will be a product of the work here. We'll be determining the preliminary limits of construction for the build alternative, and we will be using the data to help identify what the impacts and evaluate the alternatives are as we go through forward. So I mentioned input on the draft purpose and need statement. And so I wanted to spend just a minute to tell you why it's such an important thing in the NEPA documentation process. I've got just a couple of bullet points to read here that conveys, and these are not our words. These are from the Federal Highway Administration. We have representatives here representing federal highways, but this is the things that they are looking for as we put this together, and we'll talk about in just a minute what we came up with for purpose and need. Validates the balance between the need for a project and social and natural environment impacts that might result. It establishes that this project is warranting consideration when you think about all of the other needs and all the other highway roadwork projects in South Dakota. It drives the process for alternatives consideration, in-depth analysis, and ultimate selection of the preferred alternative. And there are several alternatives that will be considered for the project. And it is vital to meeting the requirements of other federal laws and executive orders protecting the natural and human environments. And we'll talk about that a little bit more too. So this is what we have. We have 3 points for our purpose and need. This is very much a working draft. As a matter of fact, we were just tidying it up today, spending some time on it. But we'd love to hear from you, hear what you think about these points as we move forward. Number 1, the purpose and need of the project is to support planned growth and development. Most of the Sioux Falls area's planned regional growth is expected to occur in northern Lincoln County, near the proposed project, very close to where we sit. Long-range local and regional planning documents and development agreements have been approved that include the proposed project, so that's a key point. These documents recognize the project's role as a needed regional improvement to support the local roadway system that provides direct access to planned development in the future growth area. It's very, very important points. The second is the purpose and need for the project is to improve access and mobility. The project is needed to improve roadway access and mobility in the project study area by providing new access to the interstate highway system that meets access spacing guidelines for urbanized areas as the study area becomes more developed. Secondly, guiding local and regional travelers to use the appropriate local and regional transportation facilities, both presently and as planned, with efficient routing for the purpose of their trips. This is just a consideration of making trips that are efficient for travelers as they go through your growth areas. And finally, the third point is meeting the transportation system demands, is our third evaluation point for the draft purpose and need of the project. The project is needed to provide a transportation solution that will be consistent with the Sioux Falls metro area's MPO's long-range transportation plan by providing needed infrastructure to serve projected increases in traffic volumes in the study area and relieve expected future traffic congestion at other interchanges located within and near the study area. And secondly, ensuring adequate levels of service are maintained through the regional highway network. In other words, can the project be implemented without increasing, or can it decrease congestion at interchanges at I-29 and County Road 106, I-29 and 41st Street, or I-229 in Louise, for instance, under the projected traffic conditions? So thank you for listening to all of that. We do have 3 project alternatives being evaluated in the environmental assessment, and I'll just briefly tell you what they are, and they are on the boards in the back. Alternative 1 is the existing conditions alternative. This is a baseline type alternative that assumes no interchange and no overpass would be constructed at I-29 and 85th Street. It's a baseline. It's used for measuring. It's typically required by the Federal Highway Administration for that very reason. So you've got a base level of information to work from to judge impacts of other alternatives. However, it would include other planned and programmed arterial street projects to improve capacity, safety, and mobility in and near the study area. So that's alternative 1. Alternative 2 is the no-build alternative. And this is a little bit tricky to understand because it does actually include something that's going to be built. The previously approved 85th Street Bridge overpass would be constructed. And it's over on the layout table over there if you haven't seen it before or haven't been part of those conversations when that project was reviewed and approved. However, no interchange would be constructed at I-29 and 85th Street. So no ramps, no access to I-29. But other planned and programmed arterial street projects to improve capacity, safety, and mobility would be constructed. So again, as a little bit of a refresher, this is what it would look like. Most of that project stays in place for the third alternative, which we'll talk about here, which is the build alternative with the diverging diamond layout. This is the alternative that was recommended in the interchange justification report that was completed last fall, which has received tentative approval from Federal Highway Administration. And the reason it's tentative is we need to finish this part next for it to be completely approved and the rest of the environmental process to be approved along with it. It has the braided ramps on I-29 and 229 coming into the interchange. And I've got a little more detail on the interchange itself. Yeah, it takes a little bit to load there. That shows more detail of the alternative. And when we're all finished up here, I'd encourage you to take a look at the board in the back that has the same thing on it. We also have a short demonstration video of what a diverging diamond interchange not only looks like, but drives like from an example that our firm worked on in the Twin Cities area that you can take a look at. But one of the things that we also wanted to make sure that everybody understood, we've had a lot of technical work done on the diverging diamond, but we actually haven't had an opportunity to tell you all about it in this type of a forum. There is a reason that this particular alternative was selected. There's a couple of key points that I wanted to make here. First of all, it greatly improves safety over other types of interchanges. It offers many fewer conflict points. Actually, there are 14 points of conflict, and I'll explain that in a minute, for a diverging diamond interchange as opposed to 26 for a conventional interchange, a typical diamond interchange. They're spread out more within the design itself. So the safety factor comes in with the fewer number of conflict points. You would have fewer head-on, side swipe, and rear-end crashes associated with that, with varying degrees of severity as well. It can calm traffic. It can, with the proper signing, not be confusing at all. And I think the video helps explain how it operates. And also, from a safety standpoint, pedestrian crossings are shorter. Therefore, they're much safer. They are lower cost. There's less right-of-way needed, typically. And less right-of-way in the environmental side of things typically would mean there'd be fewer environmental impacts. Now, we're in the process of figuring out what they all are, but historically, it does enable or allow a project to be constructed with fewer social and environmental impacts. There's also a board in the back that explains all of the things that I talked about, kind of how the whole interchange works, how you would drive through it. I think we're up.
All right. All right, thanks, Ross. Yeah, so as Ross mentioned, we have boards up that we're not going to do a question and answer session after the presentation here. We'll have opportunity to meet with individuals at the boards after we get done. So here's our schedule that we have set up right now for the completion of the environmental study and all the way through construction. So we're in that top category right now, working through the environmental documentation. And once we get far enough along on that, we can may be able to start on some of the conceptual design plans, and then leading into final design, right-of-way acquisition and such, and then construction. We're looking at 21 to 23. We don't have an exact year on that yet, but this is our best schedule at this time that we're working off from. So here's some contacts that if you guys do have questions, there's a project website set up. It's on the City of Sioux Falls website. So you can go there. We have some information on there. We'll have the presentation and the boards. We'll have that information on there sometime shortly after the meeting. We'll get that on there. That's not on there right now. But and this contact information is in the back there as well. So with that, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight.